Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session, The Evolving Marketing Landscape. Now, as enterprises face growing pressure to do more with less, whether, economic uncertainty, the rising expectations, and just the rapidly evolving tech landscape, many organizations are rethinking how they build and scale their teams. That's where today's topic comes in. Joining me today is Chris Garvey, co-founder and CRO of Trellis Work, an industry leader in helping mid-market businesses move from reactive sales and marketing to a repeatable system-driven growth engine. Welcome to Marketing at the Edge, Chris.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the macro environment. And we're seeing this transformational shift in the business environment. And I wonder if you could talk about your perspective of this macro environment.
Yeah, well, I think everybody today is kind of, whether it's macroeconomic changes around potential down the road interest rate pressure, it's potentially tariff induced confusion, and just the rise of AI. I think everybody is in a bit of an uncertain position right now, which is causing all kinds of reassessment within organizations of large and small, whether it's tighter budgets, the pressure to do more with AI, even though most organizations don't exactly know how to use it quite yet, but we know we need to do something with it. Planning cycles are getting shorter, customer demands are getting more and more tighter. So I just think there's an overall kind of certain amount of uncertainty, I'd say, within organizations, large and small, that everybody from service providers are trying to support those organizations on from the buyers all the way down are struggling to deal with right now.
Now, I read a report in Gartner that suggested that 70% of CMOs plan to outsource more of their marketing functions in the next 12 months. So what changed and what are the ramifications of that, both good and bad?
Well, I think again, it comes back to there's a certain amount of uncertainty within the economy. And so when uncertainty happens, you're looking to cut costs. And whether sometimes organizations make the wrong cuts in the wrong places, I think a lot of the folks that are in the market who are maybe more towards oriented around go to market and acquisition of demand would say, well, in a down economy or a sideways economy, the last place that you want to make some cuts is going to be on bringing in business, right, organically. But nevertheless, that tends to be the case where they're either trimming budgets that are allocated towards ad spend, towards thought leadership, towards R&D, all these other areas that we know that, and there's countless business studies, and you go to business school, it's what they teach you. It's like, hey, the companies that won are the ones that double down through down economy, and those are the ones that end up on the other side. Nevertheless, that's not what everybody does. And so I think that type of pressure is creating the uncertainty and then ultimately downward pressure on cost within organizations, and that's manifesting in marketing and go to market. The other thing is just, there's hard to find talent that's out there. While on the surface the economy seems to be doing okay in some sectors, you and I both operating within the tech sector know that there is just actually absolutely an iceberg of available people that are out there. Doesn't necessarily mean they're the right people that have the right skills, but there's a lot of people that are available out there, and that kind of has an opposite effect, right? Whereas you have more people that are out in the market searching, it becomes really hard to actually sort through those folks to find the perfectly well capable and qualified people to be able to do what you need to do to execute on your strategy. And so it's creating a lot of just challenges for organizations where instead of wading through that available talent pool, they're potentially going to market to outsource some of these functions to deal with cost pressure, lack of ability to find talent, and then also an ability to just stay flexible and look for to try different strategies. Which, if you're outsourcing it, you can use a vendor to experiment more without making a big investment within a full time role.
So, you kind of touched upon fractional marketing. So, how can you make that kind of successful in your organization?
I think it starts with making sure that you're really clear about what the objectives are that you're trying to do. So instead of making broad sweeping changes, you're going to go to market to engage with a fractional, potentially an interim while you find what the right strategy is. But that's really focused around, say, a core set of improvement areas that you've crisply defined and that you can measure either somebody that you're bringing in from the outside against. Maybe they have a particular set of skill sets that are very specifically aligned around that particular problem. And so That is how we're starting to see clients that are going to market to outsource some of these capabilities to say, I have this lead generation problem, or I have this revenue engine problem that I need to solve for this particular segment of the market. And they're trying to engage talent or expertise or services firms to outsource that are very, very specifically focused on solving that particular problem. That being said, assuming the organization actually knows what those problems are and they can really be very specific about how to engage around that, we continually see lots of organizations who know they need to bring in demand, they know they need to sell more, but they don't necessarily have a good, crisp definition of what their ICP is. And then when you start to go to market to divide out and kind of bring in the talent and the help that's needed to go attack for that ICP, they really don't really know where to start. So that's sort of place number one if you're going to go to market to engage extra help, either to define what your ICP is so then you can go to step two, or go to step one and make sure what you're actually going to market to help with.
Yeah, and I think that's also a part of it is, and it's, somebody told this to me, are you budgeting for results or are you budgeting for headcount? And really you're budgeting for results. So given that, I mean, how are fractional marketers paid, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's not typical based on my experience to see that there's an actually outcome based model. I think the entire services industry right now is trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next market cycle as AI starts to rework, every corner of an organization, from internal operations to product development to, software development, everything. But um, trying to tie specific outcomes to engaging a fractional is a pretty difficult thing. And I think the reason for that is there's still, even though it's a fractional, they might be super focused, they still have to deal with a lot of the internal organizational things that go on that they may not necessarily be in control of, right? As a fractional. And so you're typically going to align them around an allocated capacity of what their time is, that of how they're going to support the organization, or maybe just having that attention on a particular objective that they're going after, but saying, hey, this fractional firm or person is going to bring in X number of leads and it's going to translate to this value at this conversion rate. I think that's a pretty difficult thing to do, just given all the organizational complexities that are out there. That being said, I do think as we go more and more towards uh, outcome based services, and to get back to my point before of what services firms are all trying to figure this out, because the whole idea of moving away from hours, I'm charging you this number of hours, to you're getting this deliverable, that is coming. And most services firms will have to be forced to operate in this way as they get more and more efficient internally at what they're doing. They're going to need to focus around the actual outcome versus just, hey, I'm charging you for this many hours.
And last question, I know I said last question, but what is the process for integrating fractional into your team? I mean, what does that look like? Is it a monthly engagement? How does that work? Help us understand that.
Yeah, typically it will start out with some type of committed amount of time, because I think we can say most people can't, make an impact in a week, right? You've got to have a certain amount of time, certain amount of runway that you would allow that person to become engaged within the organization. So what you'll typically find is, hey, there's at least a 3 month retainer, or a 3 month committed amount of time that the person is going to come into the organization. What you'll find is also typically not hourly rates or anything like that. It's a larger block, which is maybe it's a weekly rate, a monthly rate, a quarterly rate, and so on, which allows more flexibility. Sometimes you're going to fully utilize and then some, and sometimes you're going to use less. And that could depend on different, capacity of the organization or things that are going on. So I would expect that type of a model. But I would look to treat that person as part of the team, right? Yes, and it may be different than how you've engaged consultants before, but if you're bringing in somebody at a leadership level, you should treat them like a leader and as someone that's part of the team, and expect that back out of them. So, yes, they might be there to work on a very specific task, or part of the marketing agenda, or maybe it's broad transformation, but treat them as part of the leadership team, bring them into the organization, let your staff know that they're part of the leadership team. And particularly if they're there to make change, drive change, that they have the authority to do so. Where I've seen fractionals not be successful is because the leader, the CEO, the CRO, whoever it is that's brought that person in, hasn't really told the organization that this person is a proxy. They are here to make this decision. They are here to actually drive this change. And so, quite honestly, you end up potentially wasting a lot of money, or worse, just confusing the organization further and holding you back. So I would really look to embrace that person and make sure that they're there, and what their marching orders are very clear to everyone in the organization.
No, completely agreed. So, well, I want to thank the audience for tuning in to Marketing on Demand and how fractional talent is really reshaping modern marketing teams. As always, I hope you found this session insightful and actionable as you explore how to integrate AI into your marketing motion. A special thanks, as always, to our guest, Chris Garvey, for sharing his expertise. So thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
So to continue learning from Chris, follow him on LinkedIn, and I'll put up his LinkedIn address. Now, if you'd like to revisit today's insights or explore upcoming topics, stay connected at Marketing at the Edge. I'm Michael Elliott. Until next time.